Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Eddie G. So I'm starting a brand new series here on my YouTube channel, and it's going to focus all about graphic design. So we're going to be doing a lot of tips, a lot of tricks, and a lot of tutorials to help you create better content for your brand. Now, I thought there'd be no better way to kick this new series off than to actually create the thumbnail that I'm going to use for this video. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. So to kick it off, I've already created a new document in Adobe Photoshop that's 1920 by 1080. Now, the reason I create my thumbnails that size is that's the full HD quality of this image. That's going to give you the best representation of your thumbnail when you upload it to YouTube and you share it out around your social media channels. So what I'm going to do first is something that I see a lot of people doing and also a lot of people not doing. And that's going to be to add a border or a frame, if you will, around your thumbnail. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow your thumbnail to stick out a little bit better against the other people that aren't adding a border to their thumbnail when people go to YouTube and they're scrolling through videos. So what I'm going to do first is come down here and create a new layer, and I'm just going to hit Control A to select all. And I'm going to go Edit, Fill, and I'm just going to fill it in with black. You can fill it in with whatever color you want because we're actually going to get rid of that color here in a minute. So now I'm going to come over here to my new layer. I'm going to double click over here, and that's going to open up the layer style window. And I'm going to click on stroke. Now I've already got my stroke set to 15 because I believe that's a good stroke size for YouTube thumbnails. You can go up to 20 if you like, and that gives you a little bit thicker of a stroke, but I'm gonna stick to 15. And again, you can put whatever stroke color you want on here because we're gonna change that a little bit in the tutorial. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on OK. Now you can see we have a nice border around our thumbnail, but the black fill is still there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and pull down the fill all the way down to 0%. Now you don't wanna do the opacity down to 0% because what that's going to do is you're going to lose the entire layer. But if you pull the fill down to 0%, it takes the black color out of it and leaves that nice border around your thumbnail. So we've got the makings in the beginning of a good thumbnail. We've got a nice border, but now I need a background for this. So since this is going to be a Photoshop tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a screenshot that I took a little bit earlier before this video of the actual Adobe Photoshop user interface. So I'm just going to drop this in here, and you can see I put it under or behind our border layer that we've done. So you can't see the little white trim around there, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So the screenshot actually isn't the entire thumbnail, but since we put a border around it, I've got the Photoshop user interface background image completely filled in with the border. But obviously this is really, really bright. You can see it, and it's going to take away from the overall thumbnail. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add a new layer, and again I'm going to hit Control A, and I'm just going to fill this with black just for the time being. Now obviously it looks like I filled this entire thing in with black, which I did, but on this instance I'm going to take the opacity and bring it down to about here. I think that looks pretty good. So what this actually is doing is it's actually giving it almost a screen, right? So you can still see what's going on in the background of the thumbnail, but it's not gonna overpower the title, and it's not gonna overpower the other graphic effects that we put in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that. Now what I'm gonna do, since this again is a Photoshop tutorial, I'm gonna bring in the Photoshop icon. Now this is obviously the Photoshop icon, so I'm gonna move this around in my thumbnail to where I think it has a really good balance for what I'm looking for, and I think I like it right there. So this looks pretty good. We have the makings of a great looking thumbnail. We've got a nice border, we've got a good background that's relevant to what we're actually talking about in the tutorial. We've got the Photoshop logo or icon, so you know it's a Photoshop tutorial. But the one thing that I see right now that looks off is the blue border doesn't match the blue in the Photoshop icon. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here to our border layer. I'm gonna double click on the stroke. I'm gonna come here to color, and I'm gonna use the eyedropper to select the color from the Photoshop logo. Click on OK. And now you can see the blue border matches the color of the branding of Adobe Photoshop. So now the branding is cohesive and this thumbnail is starting to come together. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add the text or the title of this video into the thumbnail. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna grab a font that I like, and I like Bebas New because I just like the way that it looks. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna type how to make YouTube thumbnails with, and center this up just a little bit, and then I'm going to come in here and type Photoshop underneath that, but I am going to make Photoshop much bigger because obviously this is a Photoshop tutorial and you want to be able to see that more predominantly than any other text in the thumbnail. So we've got how to make YouTube thumbnails with Photoshop. Let's make that just a touch bigger. Center that up. Come over here and we're going to grab both of these text layers and I'm going to bring this down almost to the center, basically the center of this thumbnail. And now I'm going to take this Photoshop image or this Photoshop icon and bring that up just a touch like that to give it just a little bit of balance. So now you can see our thumbnail is actually starting to take shape. Again, we've got a good representation in the background of what the tutorial is using. Adobe Photoshop, that's the user interface. We've obviously got the Photoshop icon right here, and we've got the title of our video, which is how to make YouTube thumbnails with Photoshop. But what I want to do is I want to make this text, the title of our thumbnail, stick out just a bit more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here and add a new layer. We're going to bring that down under the border layer, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to draw a shape that's going to be basically a background for the text. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to fill it again with black. So you can see now the title is actually sticking out a lot better against the background, but you can still see what's going on in the background, but this still kind of looks a little bit plain. So I'm going to come over to the background of what I did on the text and I'm going to double click on it. And I'm going to give it a stroke as well. But I don't want to give it a blue stroke, and that's too big. I'm going to reduce that down by half and give it a 7-pixel border. And I'm actually going to make that all white. Now, this is actually starting to shape up really, really nicely. And actually, I think that stroke is still a little bit too big. So I'm going to take that stroke down to 5. There we go, and say okay. Now, I like this and I really like the way it's shaping up, but I still want to be able to see behind this or through this. So what I'm gonna come back over here is I'm gonna click on the layer that we put behind the text, but underneath our border, and I'm gonna bring the opacity of that down to make it just a touch translucent, right? So you can still see what's going on. I think I'm just going to take that just all the way down to 50. No, I'm going to bring that up to about 60%. So you can still see the Adobe Photoshop user interface behind it, which is the background of our thumbnail, but the black that we filled it in with is giving a better pop, if you will, to the title of our video. So I think we have a really good thumbnail going on. Now you could come in here and you could add some more elements, like I have an arrow here, so I can bring this in just by dragging it over. Now, it's obviously black, so I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to get rid of that layer. So I like this thumbnail just the way that it is. So I think this tutorial, I hope that it helps you guys out because I wanted to show you how simple it can be. And now I'm going to start to use all of this basically as a template for all my videos that are going to be Photoshop tutorials. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to give it a like and subscribe and set up those notifications so you don't miss any of my new videos when I drop them on my YouTube channel.